This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. We have a pretty good show for you tonight. We have Renowned Baritone David Britton joining us here. We're going to be talking about his new album and his life and dealing with growing up as the son of missionaries. But before we get to that, we have a couple of announcements to make, and then I have a phone call that I have to make. But nevertheless, I think David is on the line. David, hold on there, and we'll be with you in just a couple of minutes. For those of you that still want to follow me, it's on Facebook at Gary Allen. If you want to go to Twitter, it's at capital G, small a, The Express. And if you want to know a little more about me, all you have to do is go to www.meetgaryallen.com, and you can find out all there is about me. Before we get to EW, because I know he has an announcement he would like to make, I learned late this afternoon that a dear friend of mine, Mr. Perry Mano, passed away recently at the age of 56 years old. He was the owner and CEO or COO of AmeriStreamLive.com, and this industry is going to surely miss him, and my condolences go out to he and his entire family. EW, I know there's something with the radio station is involved with a charity event. You want to let everybody in on it and how they can help out with this situation.
All right. Well, what we are doing is called the Santa Bag Drive. It's TMV Cafe Santa Bag Drive. And since we, for those who know, we have been very active in the community and we work with a lot of organizations closely. And again, we're working with another group called Ayuda, which is the same one that helped us do the backpack drive. What we're trying to do is raise as much money and or things to help give back to families in need if they need, a bus pass to get back and forth to job interviews, food, the works. There's different things that people are in need of, and we want to make that difference for them for Christmas this year. And so what we're trying to do is press the Santa Bag Drive. It's next month. It's hard to believe. Yes, it is next month.
Yes.
So simply go to tmvcafe.com. You'll find it there on the right-hand side, about middle of the page, that describes the event. What we're doing is just trying to gather as much. If you want to send items, there is a post office box you can send things to. We prefer that you please send unwrapped items because Santa Claus, myself, will be delivering this along with Ayuda to the families in need this year.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that further as we get with the programs, as we get closer to the holidays. And anything that we do here at TMZ, we're very, very pleased to be part of and help out in any way we can. But let's get to tonight's guest, Mr. David Britton. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's great to be here with you tonight.
It's wonderful to be here. And before I get to questions and talking about your new album called Christmas, which is a Christmas album, and, of course, American Glory. And if you find out a little bit more about David, you can always go visit him at davidbritton.com. I want to read this here because this is a statement that you made about the music that you do, David. In a world that is full of so much turmoil and pain, it is my goal to use music to shed a glimmer of light, to bring comfort to those that grieve, peace to those at war, hope to those that fail. Encouragement is to those that feel alone, joy to those in despair. I can't think of anything better to describe the kind of music that you do. I've listened to a number of cuts from your Christmas album as well as American Glory. I caught that. And I must tell you, after speaking with you, sir, I consider you a friend. And I'm a little bit in pain tonight, as you probably heard.
Yeah.
And there's an awful lot of people out there that are in pain as well. But you grew up the son of missionaries. You are what we would call a Christian singer, although you do not classify yourself as a church singer, which we will get to the distinction there.
Right.
But why music? I mean, what was it about music that propelled you in that direction as compared to maybe being a minister or a priest or a missionary like your mom and dad?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it really is. It came down to a number of things. First of all, I think that music is one of those talents that God does bestow upon people, right? I don't think there's anything. Nobody sort of wakes up and decides just because they can or they want to that they're going to be a musician. It's something that happens deep in your bones, deep in your genetic makeup, and so for me, that was it was something that I think I was just I felt like I was born to do. And in terms of not going into full-time ministry, that to me requires a special calling. I think that people that are in that are called to do that. And I felt that my calling was always to use music as a venue to be able to share both God's love to the world, but also, as you articulated from the sort of quote, for people that are in pain, that are hurting, an opportunity for me to be used by using the talents and the gifts that I feel God has given me to be able to share His light and His love to the world.
By the way, I want to make a correction, everybody. I said TMV. It's not. It's TMZ. I'm sorry. And hello to Randy. David, we have a listener who listens to me every week. His name is Randy, and he's really a great gentleman. So I want to say hello to him.
Sure.
You had the opportunity traveling with your mom and dad because you were in a lot of different countries. And we take a look at the situation that we are in now. And but I want to get, before I go too far ahead, let me get back to what my original thought was, and that is, even though you're not an ordained minister and you're not a missionary, your songs and what you do is a mission. It's almost like you have been called by God, and this is how He wants you to express His glory and to give hope and peace and comfort to everyone out there. Even though you may not technically be a minister, this is your mission. This is you as a missionary continuing on by spreading the joy and love of your music and giving hope and gladness to all who listen.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that I think that you and I talked about this the last time when we were chatting before the show. That I think we all have that outlet that we're called to do what we can while we're here on this planet. And for me, it just happens to be music, and I do hope that that folks that do listen to it, and I will get to the whole point about the delineation between church music and sort of the things that I have been called to do. I feel, but I do think that it's my place to use the gifts of music that I've been given as much as I can to the best of my ability, and to continue to work on them to make it meaningful to the folks that listen. I don't want to waste people's time by putting things out that are not meaningful. Right.
Well, let's get to the Christmas album here real quick before we get involved in any more of your background and everything, because I want people to enjoy this. And my first question before we get to the first cut here is, when you sit down to put together an album, whether it's the Christmas album or whether it's American Glory or any other album, how do you pick and choose the songs that you're going to use, and how do you pick and choose the order in which you're going to put them? Is there sort of a like in the old rock and roll days, they used to hit you with the top song right off the bat, and then they'd have a couple other songs, and then on side two there'd be a couple of songs that maybe could be hits or something like that. And of course, unless you're Stevie Wonder or the Beatles, and everything seems to be a hit. But how do you pick? How do you pick the order, one through whatever, that these songs are going to be?
Yeah, that's a great point. That first of all, how you select songs for Christmas. Fortunately for Christmas, it's a little easier because a lot of people know what they like. There's a certain catalog of songs at Christmas time. You better hit a couple of those, or it's not technically a Christmas album, I suppose. Mm-hmm. In terms of the order itself, I think the world has changed, especially with single downloads of music on digital streaming. Right. But I do think it's you still get one chance to make that first impression, and so you're certainly going to try to put good stuff at the top of the list, even though people may pick and choose. That's the big difference now, right? People may not even purchase the whole album; they'll purchase what they want from the album. So in some ways, it forces artists to make sure that most everything on the album is good. Mm-hmm. And then it really becomes, a consumer's choice in terms of what they're going to pick. But having said all that, when we went through the ordering process, we absolutely did say, how does this all flow one to another in case someone did purchase the CD itself and wanted to play it through?
Right. I love it. I listened to it. A couple of times. I've had it now for a couple of weeks. And I've been listening to it because I love Christmas music. I think my favorite Christmas song, which is not on here, by the way, is "Here Comes Here Comes Santa Claus," and I don't think it would fit into the songs that you have. EW, if you're back there, let's let everybody listen to cut one here, "Joy to the World." and let people hear how magnificent your voice is.
To the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing.
Oh boy, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready for it. How many? I know what it's like to go in and do a voiceover. And we do have a question for you after I get done with this. But how many takes do you do? Do you do just kind of a couple of rehearsal takes and then hopefully everybody comes together, or do you go in independently now since everything's digital and the music has already been cut? You just have to go in and lend your voice to it.
Yeah, in this, I like to be really involved with everything. So when Billy Smiley, who is the producer on both this album and American Glory, the way we worked is we collaborated a lot on what the arrangements were going to be. And so we would sit down, we would chart it all out, figure out what we want to do, where we wanted to have special moments, and then we work with the individual instrumentalists. And it's bass and drums will probably do things together at the same time. And then later we'll add in the keyboards, and then after that you add in guitars, and then eventually you'll do the lead vocal parts once you've got a bass line done. But I like to be involved in all of that. And then in terms of vocal takes, the nice thing about the way we do things today is you walk in and you lay down the best track, and I'll tell you, usually the first take is one of the better ones, so you save as much of the first one as possible. And then after that, you layer in the background vocals, and then it goes into the whole magic of mixing and getting the mix right, and you come out with something like this.
Yeah, I think it's great. We're gonna play a couple other cuts here in a little bit. We're gonna play 1 minute from each upcoming, because you do one of my favorite songs of all time, and is "I'll Be Home for Christmas." Gentleman,
good, yeah.
A gentleman that I've had the pleasure of working with as his opening act, and that's Michael Bublé, does a great "I'll Be Home for Christmas," and I used to cry every time I'd hear that, because you know this, being on the road a lot as I was and you are, being home for Christmas is something special, and most of the last 35 years, I've never been home for Christmas, so it's something special to be there. What are your favorite Christmas songs? I mean, aside from what's on the album, and we know that, and when you go to davidbritton.com, you can check out the album, the CD, and purchase it, and I really highly recommend it. But what are some of your favorite Christmas songs that you couldn't get on this one that maybe you'll get on the next one?
I'll tell you, there was quite a list, and part of it had to do with what was the style we were really going for. I mean, there's a great old French carol, Lully Lulay, which is just a charming, beautiful piece, but it was a little too subdued. We had enough melancholy on the album. We wanted to make sure we had room for some up-tempo things. There's a lot of different things. Lo, how a rose ere blooming, from some of the classical things. There's also some things from the different cultures as well. Jesu Bambin is the one that's been popular over the years by, I think, three tenors did it at one point. And so, I mean, the list is endless. It goes on and on. There was a Swedish folk tune that I would love to have put on there as well. But again, it was just a matter of finding the things that we thought would resonate and that would fit together in the package. And so had to let some of those go. We'll reserve them for live performances, of course. We'll intersperse things as a surprise to the audience, of course. But, yeah. Is
there going to be another Christmas album next year, CD?
I don't know that we'll do one quite next year. I think we'll let this one live for a little bit. But in the meantime, clearly all the ideas that we weren't able to put on this one there will be room for another one. If the market so demands of one, we'll be happy to accommodate. Christmas to me, great time of year. It's my absolute favorite time because of what it means to me. But we will in the future. There may be another one. Yeah, we'll think about that.
What was Christmas like for you growing up with your mom and dad, missionaries, and living in a lot of different countries? And how do other people in other countries approach Christmas? And talk a little bit about the eye-opening experiences that you had seeing some of the poverty. We talked about this when we spoke on the phone a while ago around the world as compared to the children here who are spoiled rotten. Even if you're the poorest of the poor, you're still spoiled rotten compared to kids around the country. And to answer a question that just came in, you can get the CD, I think, on davidbritton.com. Is that correct, David?
That's right. Yeah, you can do that. It's in some of the Christian bookstores as well. But yep, it's on the davidbritton.com website. You can place an order there. Yeah.
And you are a signed artist, are you not?
I'm with Shadowlands label, which is based there out of Nashville. So that's where we do. I do most of the recording out of there. Yeah.
I like Nashville, Tennessee. It's great. But getting back to my major question before we got to the questions, what was it like for you, and what did you see that was eye-opening that makes you appreciate everything you have today?
Yeah, I think a couple of things come to mind. First of all, as a missionary kid, the truth is that while we didn't have necessarily a lot of money, we had other types of riches, right? We were blessed that I had a very close-knit family. We had friends that were in a similar situation, and we spent a lot of time with them. We had music. Music was such, especially at Christmas time, music played a very instrumental part. My mom had Norwegian background, and there's a great deal of singing that comes with that Scandinavian tradition. And my dad, of course, had Irish and German background, and so there was always a lot of music at the house, and at Christmas time specifically. In terms of how we saw the world, I was born and grew up on a small island in the Caribbean, not quite the third world, but you could probably see it from there. And I think that the idea of being blessed, that we were able to have the meal we needed when we needed it, that we had a roof over our heads, that we were never out on the street when there were so many people that might have been, and that we had the knowledge of a loving Savior and understanding that where so many people were really lost in a very dark place. Those are the things that speak to me. And then when we moved to Europe, Europe is a wonderful place, and at the holiday time, it's a very charming place to be. But it can also be a very dark place. There's a lot of desperation in Europe. There's a lot of concern from a spiritual perspective. It's it can be a fairly dark place as well. And And so I love the traditions that we were able to experience in the different cultures. In Italy in the holiday time, it's very different than in the Caribbean, of course, which is very different than North America and the United States. So a great deal of, I just feel very blessed to have had the experiences I had as a child growing up and just seeing the world with, really innocent eyes, frankly. Very interesting time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I was very fortunate enough to travel when I was a young man. I had the circumstances in which members of my family were able to allow us, the children and cousins and nieces and nephews, to travel and stuff. But it opens your eyes up when you see other countries, particularly third world countries, and you see the poverty, and you see that a little like what we would call a matchbox truck or car would be so wonderful for a child in those countries to get, and yet the children in this country get it and they go, "Oh, it was the wrong car. Why didn't you get it in red instead of blue?" And it's just I think everybody, unfortunately, it's not possible, but everybody should get the opportunity to go to some of the poverty-ridden countries, in riddled countries, and you don't have to go very far. You can go into Haiti and you can see it 24/7. You can go to some of our own backyards. I know on the south side of Chicago, there are a lot of places where there are no floors. It's a dirt floor where some of these kids grow up, and it's horrible and it's painful to watch. But let's get back into something a little more understanding. What did your mom and dad teach you growing up that you've held on to ever since, that's helped you become a better human being?
Yeah, wow. I would say that one of the biggest things that they taught me was that I'm never too far away to be out of reach from God's love. There's really nothing that can separate me from that. And that was exemplified to me through their own love for me. My parents, I think I was, in today's world, I feel very privileged that I had a father who, and have a father. He's still, he lives there in Tennessee, and just spoke with him earlier today. But I love the fact that my father emulated what my heavenly Father is to me. I know many people don't have that. No. They don't have a human father that can emulate what their heavenly Father could be. And so, to me, that was one of the great lessons that I hope I can be as good a father to my own children, frankly.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mother and father are both in heaven, and most of my family, siblings, etc., are in heaven as well. So there's a bit of a loneliness on my part come the holidays, because I wish I could just hug my mom, for 5 minutes. So, but unfortunately, that's going to have to wait for a long time to come, because I'm in no hurry to get where she is, and frankly, I'm sure she's in no hurry to have me back right away either. So,
Right. Well, and if it's any consolation, my mom's probably up there right now talking her ear off. So,
well,
probably hanging out in time for Christmas.
Yeah, I can't. That's the one thing about being in heaven. I just wonder how they celebrate Christmas, if they do, or Christmas is every day of the year. The only sidetrack to this, though, David, and it's a joke that I've been saying for years, is the one thing about dying and going to heaven is I'm going to be surrounded by dead people.
But they'll be more full of life than they ever have been.
Yeah, there'll be no pain, there'll be no anger, there'll be no hate, there'll be no prejudice, there'll be no Democrat, Republican, conservative, or whatever, or whether you like the Phillies or the Mets or whatever, there'll be none of that going on. It won't matter. We talked at the top of the show about the fact that you and I both discussed that you are not what you call a church singer, but you are a Christian artist. For those that do understand that, let's add to their knowledge. For those who don't understand that, explain what you mean by that, in that I think I know what you mean. You don't sing in a church, but there's more to it than that.
Well, and I think to be really clear about that, I do sing in my own local church. I do sing when I'm asked to. I love to sing in the church. Whenever I go visit my dad, if they'll have me, I'll sing there as well. But I'm not what they would call a worship leader or a worship minister, right? A lot of folks that are Christians that are in the music industry are very much intending to sing for the church, and their outlet is inside the church. And for me, I always felt, and I think, again, it's the missionary kid in me, but I always felt out, felt I was called out to do other types of music, and that's what brought me into studying opera for the first part of my life and the career. It was not intended, I was singing music, and I was a Christian, and I am a Christian, but it was not that all of my musical energy and efforts were for the edification of the church alone, but rather to take the voice that I thought God had given me and to go out into the world, much like a carpenter that's a Christian may not necessarily just build churches, but may build homes and offices and other things that are helpful, and by their presence in the world can hopefully bring a light. That's what my whole intention has been as a musician. So I will sing in church gladly, and I'll happily go and sing in churches, but I have never felt called to be a worship leader, and much of the music that I sing is not necessarily worship music. Right. It's a little bit more what we might call soloistic or concert-based, music, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to me?
Well, and here's another thing too that I've always wanted to ask artists, and I haven't. The music business, whether you are singing Christian music or whether you're singing rock and roll or gospel or jazz or whatever the case may be, is a very difficult industry. I mean, it's very difficult to break into. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry who thinks they can sing and wants to cut an album. How difficult of a road was it for you? And talk about some of the roadblocks that you had to learn to overcome and how your faith helped you overcome and withstand and keep moving forward.
So I think it begins for me all the way back in my transition from college to graduate school when I decided to actually go into the classical music world. All through high school and college, I was a drummer in a band. I thought I wanted to be a studio rock musician. And I got to college and I started to really study classical voice with a teacher there that really sort of said, listen, there's an opportunity for you to go and use this big instrument on the operatic stage and do some, art songs. For me, the big challenge there was very different. So the classical arts world is a very different world than the world of the recording artists today. The way you'd go and get work there, you'd go fly to New York, show up and do auditions and, line up 3 or 4 different engagements, and then, start to really build a resume and go off and sing an opera for 3 or 4 weeks at a stint in some city, and then move on to the next one and sprinkle in recitals, and that's how you paid your bills. Oftentimes teach voice lessons on the side. And then in this world, it's very different. It's all social media and it's digital downloads, and it's how to get the right producer to get the right sound that really works for you. And I think that to be totally transparent, about 10 years ago or so, I actually stopped doing music altogether because I had a young family and I felt I needed to provide for them. Right. And so I stepped away from music for about 4 or 5 years entirely, didn't sing a note. And I was okay with it. I think God, and this is where the faith came in, God gave me a sense of peace about that time in my life that I didn't desire to go off and do music. I didn't have those real pangs of having left behind the artistic lifestyle. I felt very comfortable in that. And then about 4 years ago or so, felt God sort of tugging at me. And there's a parable in the Bible about the king and the talents that he bestows on various servants. And one of those servants, as you know from the story, decides to bury the talent he was given. And when the master comes back and says, what did you do with it? He said, well, I kept it safe. I buried it in a hole. Whereas the other ones that were given talent saw it multiply. And I said, you know what? When it comes to the end of my life, I don't want to be that servant that just buried a talent. I want to be one that actually can show that I have done my best with what I felt I had been given. Yeah. And so that compelled me to go back in and say, I love opera. I love the classical voice piece, but I felt like God was calling me to use that same instrument in a, what we might call a more accessible, more mainstream way. And that's all been the journey of how God has put people in my life to sort of get me to this point. And it's not easy still. We still struggle with, will the CDs sell? All the business aspects of it? But God sustains us through all of that. So,
well, and I firmly believe that God gives you a talent. He expects you to do something with it. And yes, you don't bury it in the ground. So, you do something with the talent, sink or swim. because God will obviously give you the tools that it's necessary. EW, let's hear another cut from the album. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, Christmas song besides Old Holy Night is I'll Be Home for Christmas. Let's hear about a minute of that, and then we'll get back to some questions with David.
Of a place I love even more than I usually do, and although I know it's a long road back, I promise you I'll be home for Christmas. You can count on.
Boy, I'll tell you what, I got a tear in my eye thinking about coming home for Christmas, David, and my mother would have Christmas dinner there when I was a little boy cooking, or when I came home from the service, and choking me up a little bit. I loved my mother. I adored her. Anything that I ever hoped to be in my life is because of her. And that's why I work hard at getting this show going, and my producer, EW, works hard. David, do you think talent brings about opportunities, or do opportunities help you showcase your talent? I don't know if I'm putting that correctly, but, there are a lot of people who you see them on American Idol, and, they certainly have talent, but the opportunity just isn't there. Do you think that the more you're out there, the more the opportunities happen for you if you have the talent?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that first of all, you have to show up, and you have to show up a lot. And no one's going to give you anything, frankly, in this world, right? It's going to be a matter of showing up. But when you do show up, it's important that you're ready, right? So I think that one of the things that I learned is that you've always got to have the old sample box ready to go, if you want to use the old salesman terms, right? You've got to have your sample box ready at a moment's notice, because you never know when a cancellation will occur, when an artist will fall ill and they'll need a replacement. Those are the things that start to launch the next phase of anyone's career. Mm-hmm. But I think it is a mixture. I think that you can't have just opportunity without, and it's not, I think the talent, I break talent into two pieces. There's the musical gift, right, which is I can hear the right pitches and my voice sounds okay. But then there's another part of it, which is the work ethic. Mm-hmm. You've got to put time into the practice room. You've got to woodshed this stuff to death. I remember being ridiculed by some of my fellow students back in college when I would sing the same two notes hours and hours on end, and they would wonder what I was doing. I was figuring out breath control, Mm-hmm. So those are the two halves of it to me. Is you've got to have the natural gifts, perhaps, but you've also got to have the desire to work. And I love the work part of it. I love practicing. I love rehearsing almost as much as I do performing.
Yeah, it's great. We have a question here from Kelly in Arizona. When did you realize you should be a singer? And to follow up on that, when did you realize, hey, I think I can make a living at this at the same time?
I think that was probably about 20 minutes ago. I decided, no, I'm kidding.
That's about when I decided I was going to get into this business, Dave.
Right. You and I, it's serendipitous. We've just sort of aligned tonight on this.
Yeah, you got to get a hold of Laura and thank her.
Right, right. I think, I've been singing since before I can remember. As a child, I was often, I loved to sing and had an ability to carry a tune. At the time, though, I didn't think, you're a kid, what do you know? It's just your dad wants you to sing up there with him, and you're going to sing. But I think I started to take it seriously toward the end of high school, and I started to take a couple of voice lessons. And then when I got to college, it was pretty clear that the instrument was not like everyone else's. The voice itself, I don't know if it's voices are strange. They're very unique. The way the cartilage and my bone structure and everything else creates the sound that happens. gave me hope, and I had enough ears around me in the form of teachers and coaches that encouraged me, and so that was sort of the start for me, was to do that. I can't imagine not having music in my life. And then in terms of how to make money at it, well, that's always the real challenge, right? When does a hobby become more than a hobby? And I have to say that when I first started doing opera full time way back in the day, right out of school, it was hard. You didn't make much money, barely enough to survive, but you start to realize that is the life of. That's why they call it being a starving artist, right? If you love something enough to do it, regardless of the amount of money you make, those are perhaps the right motivations for it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Yeah, I had a teacher, an acting teacher of mine, Charles Nelson Riley, for those of you that may go back and remember who he was. And he was a big opera fan, but he always used the joke about starving actors and starving artists. He said, you know why they work at restaurants? And like a stupid idiot, I answered. He said, because they're starving, and that's where they can go and eat.
It's true. It's true. I think I don't know of a single, at least singer, but musical artist that hasn't at one point worked at a restaurant, myself included. So
yeah, I did too. I did
there.
that whole thing. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Who's your audience? I mean, I did a show recently on faith and how people are walking away from organized religion. They're still keeping their faith. They still believe in God, but the millennials seem to be walking away more and more from organized religion. Do you find millennials to be part of your audience? They're slowly catching on and hearing you and going, hey, I like what I hear. And who is your audience in general?
Yeah, I think that my audience tends to perhaps be a little older than the millennials, frankly. But at the same time, one of the things that we've done, and there was a bit of it on the American Glory, there's a little bit of it on the Christmas album, but there's going to be a lot more of it in the upcoming album in the spring, is that we've really taken a very progressive rock approach. And we've kind of called it orchestral rock. And there's touches of it, the Joy to the World you played and other things, but we're really going to be pushing that envelope, which I think will appeal to even younger audiences. And it's not because I'm trying to appeal to younger. I just love the music that I am a drummer as well. Forget the classical music thing. I love rock and roll, and the harder the better, frankly. So I think that for me, millennials are part of my audience, perhaps, but I think most people would say that folks in their 30s and above will probably be a closer match to my demographic. In terms of the church aspect of it, I do fear that Christians and the Christian church, we've done a bit of a disservice with the way we've sort of presented ourselves to the world. And I think that, I have to say, when I came back to the States, having grown up overseas as a Christian and missionary kid, when I came back to the States, I was astonished to learn about all of the different denominations that exist around what we call the Christian church, because overseas, much of that didn't really matter. Yeah. The Bible is what, is the Word of God in my estimation. I believe that that's the Word of God, and Christ came and lived and did the things he did, and we're called to go and do things if we love him. We're called to go show his love to the world. Right. So I worry about how, you called it organized religion. I think that you're right. There's an element there that is a little concerning. And I know that our own church is doing a lot to make sure we remember that we're here to love, that we're here to reach out to the broken, to the hurt, and to be the best ambassadors possible. And frankly, let's face it, Christians over the years have perhaps not been the best ambassadors for God on the earth.
Yeah, I look at the people that call them Christians conservatives today. I'll be honest with you, I find many, and we discussed this off the air once before, how mean-spirited they can be, and they misinterpret the Bible. And Dr. Stanley and I talked about this at great length, and because I said to him, how come you never mention politics in any of your sermons? He said, because politics has no business being in my sermons. I'm here to talk about God's word, to uplift people, to give people a purpose of understanding God and to love God. And politicians, they don't care. They just want to get elected.
Yeah.
And he said the issues that they present are not issues that I want to talk about. And he said, I did do it once and it got me in trouble. And I learned my lesson, and God taught me a lesson there to keep me out of the political arena. And with what's going on today, and we're not going to get into that here, but a lot of stuff happens for all the wrong reasons. Again, Christianity has not done the world a lot of good, and neither have a lot of religions either. Let's talk about, who do you listen to when you're driving down the road in your car? Who, you said you're into rock and roll. You said you're into classical music. I mean, I love classical music. I love jazz. I grew up with a young man. His name was Jaco Pastorius. You might remember him. He was a bass player for Weather Report, and I've been around musicians a good part of my life. Who, if we were to go and listen to your CD in your car right now, or one at home, besides Christmas, which you can find at davidbritton.com, where I'm going to plug it as much as I can.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Who are you listening to? Who are you and your wife and your family listening to? Who do you like?
So my wife and I do have very different tastes. She listens to a lot more David Britton than I ever will. Let's just put that out there. I can only tolerate so much after having done it all in the studio and so on. But no, I like to listen to, if I look on the classical side, I'll start there. But I like some of the big, the brilliant voices like Pavarotti. I mean, he was one in a million. On the baritone side, some of the old guys, Leonard Warren, great American baritone from the 40s, 50s, just fantastic. Thomas Hampson, it's a great baritone, still working today. He's an American, but he's spent a great deal of his life global at this point. But he has a great interpretation of the leader and the art song. And then when we get into the rock and roll side of things, I like groups like, I hate to say it, Linkin Park. I'm, Evanescence, that big sort of gothic rock and roll sound.
Really?
I'm a big fan of some of that stuff. Yeah. Muse, I'll say, is another band that I think that they've taken, they've brought great musicianship into what they've done on their songs. Don't always agree with what they say, but I do love what they've done from a musicality perspective.
Yeah,
so that's kind of
I grew up listening. We're going to get to another cut from your song here, and then we're going to talk about your time at Carnegie Hall. I listen to a lot of jazz and a lot of classical music. My favorite composer of all time is Beethoven, but also Haydn, because I just loved his Paris suites, and I loved his London symphonies and his Paris symphonies. And I just love classical music in general, as well as jazz. But I'll be honest with you, I've worked with the Spinners. I've worked with a lot of rock and roll groups, and I'll listen to just about anything. The only thing that I'm not a really huge fan of, and boy, this is going to kill me with EW because I know he loves this kind of music. I'm not a big fan of country music so much. I like gospel music. Boy, I could listen to the Oak Ridge Boys singing gospel music.
Sure.
Till the cows come home. And I love church music, the old time gospel music, but I'm not a big fan of country music. And I have tried and I have tried and I have tried, but it just never seems to sink in. Opera, when I was young, was difficult for me to understand, but as I grew older and I matured, it got in there. Charles Nelson Riley, God rest his soul, would be proud of me now. Let's play a cut, the final cut from this, and then we're going to talk about your time playing at Carnegie Hall, which had to be a highlight for you, and you've been in an awful lot of operatic halls all throughout the world. EW, let's cue up for 1 minute the Christmas song, or let's go 2 minutes with the Christmas song.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose, Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. sunny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that.
Oh, God. I wish Christmas was here. David Britton, that's great. You know, that one part of the song when you say a turkey and some mistletoe, my grandfather used to point to me and say, "There's the turkey, Gary."
It's good.
God, that is so wonderful. And you can look for it, folks, at Christian stores everywhere. Also go on davidbritton.com. You can order it there. And I'll tell you, I'm waiting for Laura to send me my autographed copy. I got a copy that she sent me, but I want my autographed copy of David Britton because David's going to be back on this show this upcoming year quite a bit, I have a feeling, because
absolutely
a friend indeed. All right, you performed at Carnegie Hall. Not everybody can perform at Carnegie Hall. Tell me about how that came about, and
Sure.
what a thrill it had to be for you and the missus. And by the way, tell your lovely wife I said hello. God bless.
I will do that.
Your family and God's blessing on you. But talk about how it came about and how wonderful it was.
Yeah, I tell you, you talk about opportunity, and timing. I have to say, I was in San Francisco. I was going in for a voice lesson one night, and there was occasionally people would sit in and listen in on the voice lessons as they were trying to ascertain whether or not to join this voice studio, that kind of thing. And there was a short Japanese lady that was in the room, and I went through my lesson, and about halfway through, she stood up and interrupted the lesson and said, "So, can you be on a plane in a week to go to Japan?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. My voice teacher started laughing. He's like, "I haven't told him anything." And I said, "Told me what?" And she explained that there was a Japanese opera that had been composed by a famous Japanese composer. And there was one role in the opera that required an American baritone. It was the story of it was called The Dawn of Japan, and it was the whole opening up of Japan. Long story short, flew to Japan on the spur of a moment with a week's notice, had rehearsals for about 4 days in Nagoya with the Nagoya Symphony Orchestra. A week and a half after that, I was in New York. We're working with St. Luke's Orchestra, and we put on a semi-staged production of The Dawn of Japan, where I was the only American in the cast, and it's quite a wonderful opportunity for a young person at the time. So great odd experience, as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
The irony is I had just 3 years before that, I had gone to audition at Juilliard for their master's program. And I was a finalist, but I was not asked to come in. And 3 years later, I was driving past Juilliard at Lincoln Center to go to Carnegie Hall for my debut, and I thought, oh, this felt pretty good actually.
Where's the person that beat you out? He's working at Burger King.
Yeah, right.
You know,
I don't dwell on those things, but it was certainly at the moment I favored it a little bit.
There's that had to enter your mind a little bit. I wonder where the person is that beat me out tonight. You know, it's like when Jimmy Kimmel did the thing in Washington D.C. with the president. Oh God, my brain is out to lunch. A couple of years ago, when he did he did the roast, he did the reporters thing that they do every year. At the end of it, he said to his teacher, he said this goes out to Mr. So-and-so, my teacher in Las Vegas. He said, you always said I would never amount to anything. He said, I don't know what you're doing tonight, but I'm standing next to the president of the United States. So I think I think no matter how giving and forgiving that we are as people, I think you always want to turn back the clock and say to somebody, you didn't think much of me back then. Now look at me now. I know there was a young man in my high school class, for instance, who was voted, honest to God, David, voted least likely to succeed by many of the teachers. That's what they wrote in his book, in his yearbook. Guess what he became?
No idea.
He became a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force. He's a 4-star general to this day, and I think he's retired now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've always
there might have been some motivation in that whole maybe there was method behind the teacher's madness to motivate. Not that I recommend it.
No, he was a good student. He certainly made better grades than me, but he just found high school boring. He didn't like the teachers. He kept to himself. And the teachers didn't particularly care for that, back in the day when I got out of high school in 1970. And so that shows you how far back how old I am. And maybe there was some motivation, but I think he was always motivated. I think Bobby was always motivated. And I ran into him when I was in the Air Force. And at that time, he was just a first lieutenant. But I know I kept up with his career, and he did very, very well for himself. And I'm always proud of him. But I always think that in spite of yourself, you always want to point the finger back and go, see what I did? You didn't think much of me. Now look at me now, and where were you? But, but you're more forgiving than I am, David.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I've made my own, my own challenges along the way where I was perhaps the person that got the role that I never should have. I think that goes both ways sometimes. And listen, it's all by the grace of God that we do what we do anyway, right? So I have to remember that anyway. Speaking of military, though, I am also excited just to let people know I have the honor of singing for a Veterans Day dinner coming up this next week, and excited to be able to right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Actually, there's a large event going on, but it's a nice dinner to just to honor the troops again and to honor those veterans. As you know from the American Glory, great, close to my heart as well. So,
yes, we don't seem to do enough for our veterans. I was just saying to somebody the other day, you're sent into combat. You may come home. You may not. The way you left. No one ever comes back from being in combat the way they left. I'm sorry. People don't seem to understand that. They may have arms and legs and eyes and everything, but it's the mental disease that creeps in, the harshness of war. War, to me, is one of the most immoral things that has ever been invented by mankind.
Yeah.
So it's unbelievable. Let me ask you this. There's an old saying that the eyes are the windows of the soul. If that's the case, what is music to the body?
The software. I honestly think that, I don't know, music is the thing that it's the outlet for the emotion. It's the thing that God created to allow us to feel things that words can't express. I think there's just, it's something that touches deep into the emotional strain. And by the way, we're all emotional creatures, right? Mm-hmm, I think that, the Bible says we're created in the image of God. It's not just the way we look, perhaps. I think it has to do more with the emotional fibers. I think the God I believe in is a feeling God. He is he hurts when we hurt. He weeps and he rejoices and all of these things. Those are all the emotions of the Creator that we're simply mirroring, frankly. And so music to me is the conduit. It's one of the great conduits. Visual arts may be the same thing, but music to me is that thing that can go very deep. And that's why I think more than poetry, more than any other art form, for me, music does stir the soul. And I love being a vessel or an instrument in that capacity to see how that might work. Of course, I'm human too, so I'll have phlegm on the vocal cords some days, and that'll make a problem on the sound. But you never know what'll happen in live performance. Yeah. But all that to say, it has always been for me a real blessing to feel that music pouring out, and it's humbling, frankly. It's not. It's often almost like it's not me.
What goes through your mind? I can tell you what goes through mine just before I go on stage to perform, but what goes through your mind? What little thing do you say to yourself leading up to it? I know when you're in the green room or you're backstage and you're by yourself, you want to be alone for that 30 seconds, 45 seconds. What do you say to yourself just before your feet touch the stage?
The thing that goes through my mind all the way up until the moment I open my mouth and sing is, Lord, I hope this can be useful to you.
Yes.
That's about it.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else that's in it for me. It's literally, let this be used. And it's not this, partly it relieves me from the pressure of being being
Right.
fraught with error, because I know that all I can do at that moment, all the rehearsal is done, all I can do is the best I can do in the moment. And so it's a giving away which actually frees me, I think, to be able to do better than I might if it was all about me.
Yeah. I think that,
hope.
yeah, I think that a lot of performers, their egos get involved, and I think that you have for me, I my feet touch the stage and I go showtime, and I just have said backstage, God, please just be with me tonight so I may bring glory to you. And that's pretty much about all I do, because even though you are in control of what's going on stage, you want to do your best. You want to appreciate what God has given you, because God has given us all. I mean, all I can do is ask questions on a radio show. I mean, that's about all I'm good for. And to show you that, my mother's first statement to me when she heard me when I was on radio in college said, Gary, you got a perfect face for radio. So,
but even the stuff that you do, this is not something I could do. So, as you know, there's a special gift that you've got there. And then, as you also know, when the minute your feet hit the stage and you're in the spotlight and you're at the mic, then the work begins, right? So it's not just that you sort of give up and everything just happens. Then for me, it's, all right, make sure I breathe deeply on this phrase, make sure I'm not too sharp or flat on that note, make sure that I don't push too hard here so that the big note at the end is right. I mean, the microseconds go by in the course of any phrase such that you're adjusting on the fly, adjusting everything you're doing on the fly. Yeah.
I remember someone asked Frank Sinatra, how do you do what you do? He said, when you know what you're doing, it's easy.
That's right.
And he was the greatest phrase. Yeah. He could phrase better than anybody that I ever heard. The only other person that is even close is my hero, and I've worked with him, and that's Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett can sing his lungs out. We got just a couple more minutes to go, but I have to ask this, since we're talking about your album Christmas, which you can find if you go to davidbritton.com. What's your favorite Christmas of all time?
The very first one. I think that the very first Christmas that ever happened is my favorite one. It's the whole reason it's the whole reason to celebrate. It's for the first time in the entire history of humanity and of mankind, the creator of all things decided, listen, there's a mess here that has happened. These people have stepped away. I need to step into their world to help solve this issue. And to me, that's a phenomenal thing. And you can't, look back, there's a historical figure named Christ. He somehow came from somewhere, stepped into this world, and did the things that he claims he did. So to me, that very first Christmas is the whole reason, not just for why we celebrate Christmas every year, but for my own life. Right. It's my reason for getting out of bed in the morning.
Yep. David Britton, I want to thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us tonight. Everybody out there, please go to davidbritton.com. and get American Glory or the Christmas CD. You will enjoy it. You will love it. This is an extraordinary gentleman. He's a renowned baritone. He's also a friend of mine, so please support him, support all that he does. God bless you, David, and I thank you for coming on. I will get a hold of Laura, and we'll have you back on before too long, and happy holidays to you and your family.
Thanks, Gary, so much. It was a real pleasure to be on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. That concludes another show here on The Express, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. For those of you that want to follow me on Facebook, it's Gary Allen. Or if you want to go to The Express, that's the other website, the other Facebook site that we have. Also on Twitter, @G, small letters A, The Express. For more information about me, go to www.meetgaryallen.com. Very soon I'll be able to tell you about all my stuff on YouTube as soon as I get more shows plastered on there. And again, EW, do you want to give a little plug for what we're doing here, helping people out for the holidays?
Yeah, just to remind everybody, just go to www.tmvcafe.com. Check out the Santa Bag Drive that we're doing. It's very important that we reach out and make a difference in people's lives. And just the smallest thing can make a huge difference in somebody's life this year.
Oh yes, it surely can, and that's why I always appreciate EW. Thank you for all your work there behind the scenes tonight. Thank all of you very much for joining us here on the Express. We will have another show for you next week, and I thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day. God bless to all of you, and until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other.
Did you know that your baby boy would one day walk on water? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would save our sons and daughters? Did you know that your baby boy has come to make you new? And this child that you delivered will soon deliver you. Mary, did you know that your baby boy would give sight to the blind man? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would calm the storm with his hand? Did you know that your baby boy has walked where angels trod? When you kissed your little baby, you kissed the face of God. Oh, Mary, did you know? Mary, did you The blind will see, the deaf will hear, the dead will live again. The lame will leap, the dumb will speak, the praises of the Lamb. Oh, Mary, did you know that your baby boy is Lord of all creation? Mary, did you know that your baby boy would one day rule the nations? Did you know that your baby boy is heaven's perfect lamb? And the sleeping child you're holding is the great